Welcome back to the Half-Betty podcast. Andrea and I are so happy that you're taking the time to join us today. We first met our next guest down in LA last fall at Reese Witherspoon's Shine Away event, where she was speaking on a panel alongside Dr. Lucky, who, as you know, was actually our first guest on season 2. Dr. Rachel Goldman is a clinical psychologist, author, and one of those voices that just cuts through the noise in the most grounded and compassionate way. Her new book, just released, it's called When Life Happens, and it's all about navigating the messy and unexpected parts of life with more self-awareness and resilience, which honestly is something that we're always talking about here at Half-Betty. She specializes in cognitive behavioral therapy, stress management, body image, and the mind-body connection. And she's also a clinical assistant professor in psychiatry at NYU. But what we love most is how she brings all of that expertise into real, everyday life, making it feel accessible and human and to be honest, actually doable. You may have seen her in the New York Times, CNN, and The Today Show, or heard her speak with Oprah and Mel Robbins. But today, we get to have her right here with us. This is a conversation about what happens when life doesn't go according to plan and how we can meet those moments with just a little bit more grace. Our conversation has already started, so let's jump in. I know that you have been on a mission to tell people about your book and to help others. Would you do us a favor and take a moment with us and just do that beautiful pause and that beautiful breath that you could guide us through and our listeners? And maybe we can start there and then we can get into your 5 words.
Yeah, I think that sounds great. And I love starting speaking engagements or podcasts this way because just like we were just talking about before we hopped on, like we're all coming from different places, doing different things. And now I love that we're able to just be here together now, not thinking about or worrying about where we were before or where we need to be next. And this grounding exercise really helps us do that. So I love that. So together, the 3 of us and everybody listening, as long as you're not driving, I want you to put both feet flat on the floor. Mm. And I love how everybody just automatically sits up straight when you say that. And if you want to, but you don't have to, you can put one hand on your chest and one hand on your upper abdomen, belly, diaphragm area. And the reason we're doing that is just to kind of be closer to your heart, feel it, and to also really experience what is moving in your body when we do this breathing exercise. If you're really breathing more through your chest or your diaphragm. So in a moment, but not yet, I want everybody to take a breath in through their nose as their belly is expanding. And then you're going to exhale through your mouth as your belly goes back in. I want you to imagine a balloon in your belly expanding with every inhale. Let's go ahead and do that together. Let's take a breath in and out. Take a breath in and exhale. I want you to continue to take a few breaths just like that. And as you're doing it, if you notice any thoughts popping into your head, I want you to just greet them and say, this is just a thought, and kind of put it aside. And then I want you to return back to your breath. Take another breath in and out. Let's take one more together. Take a breath in and out. If you've closed your eyes, you can go ahead and open them. If you need to, you can wiggle your shoulders, your toes, your body a little bit. And I always love to then ask, how is that experience for you? I know I'm putting you on the spot now.
I feel more grounded and more present. Yeah. Mm-hmm. How about you, Andrea?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. I find that what I feel when I do that, because it's less consistent now than it perhaps was in previous years, I'm reminded. I feel this sense of it's almost like drawing on an old feeling from childhood or another time where you just felt everything was right in the world, in yourself for just a moment even. So for me, that practice acts as a profound reminder of what we can do for ourselves. And it doesn't take anything more than sitting with our feet on the ground and deep breathing. And it's very moving. Thank you.
You're so welcome. And I love that you said that, because a few things. First, you're absolutely right. Like, all we need is us and the moment. We don't need a lot of time. We need the moment to do it. And I love that word reminder, the way you described it, that it was like a reminder to you, because it really goes with a lot of what I talk about in the book and how society is constantly on the go, that we miss the signals to slow down, or we miss what's really going on in the moment. And you're right. That moment gives us that reminder of we can return here whenever we need to. And it literally is that reminder to just, let's pause. Right? Because we don't pause enough. So I love that you said that. And even doing it, it's funny, as many times as I do this and I instruct people to do it and I guide people to it, every time I do it, I feel so grounded myself. It's almost like I need it, which is why I think I started to do it actually years ago. I think I started to do it at the beginning of speaking engagements, because I felt like if I need this, other people probably also need it. And it's so multi-purposeful in that way.
It really is. I'm just thinking about my children too. I know you have kids as well. And it's a good reminder to give them permission to stop and know that they can just take a pause.
Yeah, absolutely. I do this with my children all the time.
I bet.
I taught both of them at a young age diaphragmatic breathing, which is what we just did. And I often have to remind my son that we can come back together. Like, I'll often get at his eye level and hold his hands and be like, let's do this together. And the emotions are kind of getting out of control, so to say.
That's lovely.
And it's a good reminder for us too in our midlife, in our later years, when things are wild. We have work, home life, we have children maybe, we have careers, we have pets, we have events to attend to, and it can get out of hand sometimes. So thank you for that. Yeah, beautiful reminder that we can do that whenever we need, even if it's just sitting in our car before we open the door and head out to wherever we're going, to have that moment and just breathe and know that we are grounded and we can do these things.
Exactly.
Yeah. I think the other thing that reminder or being reminded also shares with me is that we all have agency. And I feel like that word is a word that has been coming up a lot, not for just myself, but I hear that with others as well, that by the nature of whether it's this time, whether it's, age or where we are in our lives, or even if it's just society and where the world is, but I hear from so many people this almost, without them saying it, this sense of powerlessness, or that they are just being pulled along and they're not in a place where they're making decisions for themselves in many ways, but they're just caught in like a giant tsunami wave of momentum. And so it feels as though when you take a pause, like you've just led us through, it is, again, a reminder and an affirmation that we all have agency for ourselves, even if it's just in those little tiny micro moments. We get to decide to put our feet on the floor. We get to decide, as you said so beautifully, if you would put your hand on your heart. And that is such a lovely invitation, because it's not a demand, it is an invitation. And so I really feel, and I think distinctly in that, it's also not transactional. Because the other thing is that a lot of times when we are in places where we feel as though we're making a decision, we're looking for a return for our decision, or vice versa. Somebody is looking for a return on our part. And so being able to be in spots and spaces and places where we get to just make a decision that is not a transactional decision, feels so empowering and not as frequent as maybe we would like. So sorry, that was a bit of a ramble, but I just really, it feels really important for us in these times.
Yeah, I love that you said that, because something I always go back to and I like to remind people is, what I would say probably is my number one tip when you're feeling stressed or overwhelmed, is to focus on what's in your control. And that pause and that breath allows us to kind of shift the focus. Like, okay, now that I pause, what's in my control? What can I do? Right.
Yeah.
And even that pause, giving what you just said with like agency, you know, it really goes back to that. It's like, oh, right. I have a decision. I have a choice. I can pause, take this breather and focus on what's in my control, or I can react. I can, you know, react out of the emotion, just go, whatever it is. But we do have a choice. And that's what people tend to forget, that in life, there's a lot of choices. Sometimes too many can be quite overwhelming.
Yeah.
But there are choices, and we can decide, just like we have a choice to react or respond. You know, the reaction is the impulsive act, or the respond is, let me take a breath. Let me see what's best. Let me focus on what's in my control, and what action do I take then? So it really all comes back to taking back that control. In life, we often feel like we lost control, but we didn't. We have to shift the way we think about it and take back that control.
Yeah, the mindset is so important.
And it's so wonderful that you said earlier that it really resonated that you've taken what you've practiced and put it in your book, or the book brings to life what you do. And there's this beautiful connection between how you live and how you practice and how you decide, that's now found in the book. And that feels also very special, because I don't know that that's what we're finding in a lot of content that we're digesting, that, you know, it's great, it's content, but it's not necessarily grounded in the person behind it living it.
Yeah.
And that really, really landed for me. And I could see it in your face as you described it, how meaningful it is that you've taken what you've shared in your book and you practice it all the time, and you're able to speak to it and share that with others. It's such a gift.
Yeah.
I'm really excited to have that book shared with everybody.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And it's funny because it's like, which came first, right? Like I went to graduate school for this. I learned all about cognitive behavioural therapy, which is really what this book is and the type of work that I do. And I think I always was kind of using these tools almost without realizing it. And then the more tools that I learned, I started integrating in my own life and hearing myself say them day after day to clients. And then I realized, so CBT, cognitive behavioural therapy, is a very specific type of therapy that is more goal directed. It is more client centered, but more like a team approach between you and your therapist. And it's interesting because a lot of types of therapy, you don't share a lot of your personal life, if any, really. I'm not saying CBT, you disclose a lot, but, and I do supervise psychiatry residents at NYU actually on CBT. And something I say to them is, you disclose when it feels clinically appropriate. So when it's going to help the client. And something for me that has really resonated and has resonated with my clients is when I share. Like I hear time after time, my clients are like, this is why I work with you, because I see that there's pieces of your life that either I'm striving for or I want to do things like that. And I see you doing these things, right? So I think that's one thing, to have the science-backed evidence and sharing the research, which of course CBT and the work I do is science-backed, but then to also be doing it and being like, oh my gosh, I remember, like I went on a 10-minute run the other day because that's all I had. You know, now if I were to just say like, oh, just do it for 10 minutes to a client, they may be like, 10 minutes. I'm like, hey, I did it. You know, like it's all I had. Sometimes that's what we have to do. And I think that normalizes it and validates it for people in a way that's like, oh, like if she's doing it and she's a professional, you know, maybe it works, right? So I feel like, you know, not that I might my own research experiment in any way, But I truly do use the tools in the book. And, I think in the conclusion section of the book, I talk about this because at one point in the book, I say, I'm having the thought right now that I'm never going to get this book done. And in that unhelpful kind of thought section of the book, I say that. I'm like, I'm actually having an unhelpful thought right now. I'm thinking I'm never going to get this book done. And in the book, I go through the process of, okay, let's examine the evidence. Why is this unhelpful? How can I tweak that thought? And then in the conclusion, I say, do you remember when I said I never thought I was going to get this done? Here we are, right? And I say, and I got here because I used all the tools. In the book, I had to create the moments. I had to intentionally breathe. I had to remind myself that I can do this. I needed to carve out time for my running and to take care of myself. And really, that's how I got through the book. And you ladies asked me, how am I getting through this busy full-time season of my life? And it's literally the same thing. I'm doing it. I'm living the tools. I'm using the tools in the book because I don't know any other way to do it. Like that's the way to do it in my eyes. And it works for me. And I know it works for others because of my years of clinical experience as well.
Mm-hmm. How would you feel about offering up like one or two or maybe even three pieces for women in their midlife who have just ended a job, ended a career, and they're switching gears and, they're left feeling maybe sad, maybe angry, maybe frustrated, but also perhaps excited for the next phase, the next, the second half and where that will lead them. Are there one or two or three things you could offer up?
Yeah. So the first thing I would say is that it's okay to have conflicting feelings. I think a lot of people are like, well, I should be this way. How am I also this? Actually, just before us hopping on this recording, somebody asked me, how are you feeling right now? And I actually said, I'm feeling all the feelings, right? Like I'm feeling excited and nervous and overwhelmed and all these things at the same time. But I think that acknowledgement first takes some pressure off, right? Like it's okay if you're feeling all of those things. So that acknowledgement and awareness first. And that then is going to lead to some self-compassion, right? Like it's taking the pressure off. Oh, I'm allowed to feel this way. Okay. And then what I would like to say is ask yourself, what do I need right now? Right? I think we are all going through different phases of our life at different times. Every phase is temporary, important reminder. But what do I need right now? Because the person that you just described, the immediate thing that came to my mind was if that was me and I actually heard myself in what you described in different times of my life. I'm thinking back to a time years ago and a time right now. And what I would really need at the moment would be a pause, actually. I feel like I would need to pause and examine what's working, what's not working, what do I need, and what do I want? Like, what do I want right now? Not necessarily next. What do I want right now? What's the feeling I really want to be feeling, knowing that I have all these emotions, right? And I'm putting myself back to when I left my hospital job, actually, because all those things you described, I felt. I was like scared and frustrated and excited for what may be next, but also didn't know what was going to be next. And I remember actually my husband said to me, he was like, just pause. He's like, you don't have to figure it all out yet. I'm like, what do you mean? I don't have to know it like really, I was like, you know what? You're right. Like, I need to just pause and give myself the space to figure it out. Oftentimes we get stuck in our own thoughts, which is where we keep being stuck, right? That thought cycle keeps us stuck. And for what you just described, I would actually say that that person probably needs the space. What I mean by that is the mental space to be able to know, what do you really want right now? Because the go, the, living to the next thing constantly doesn't allow you to take that step and really understand, what do I want right now? What is important to me right now? And that's the perfect time to figure it out, is like when you don't really know what's next, and that's okay. But your body and your brain have been giving you a sign that like, this isn't working. So let's take that pause and like reflect and understand things, turn inward a little bit more.
Every so often, you come across a design that stays with you long after the moment has passed. Zaleska creates rings that feel like stories you can wear, thoughtfully handmade in nickel-free sterling silver and 14-karat gold. Each piece is available in sizes 4 through 15 and designed to stack, mix, and evolve with you. Each stone is natural and every piece is crafted to last without turning your fingers even a hint of green. Not sure of your size? Zaleska will happily send a free ring sizer anywhere in Canada. And for our halfbetty subscribers, we invite you to visit zaleska.ca. Discover the designs that resonate with you and use the code halfbetty for 20% off your first purchase. Thank you for being part of this community and for supporting the makers that we're so proud to share with you.
What's coming to me is the trust that we need to have in ourselves too, isn't it? To really trust that we know what's good for us, whether it's in the moment or in the near future or far ahead too, right? And sometimes that can be too hard to think too far in the future. Yeah, but just to trust.
Yeah, I love that you said that because we don't trust ourselves enough. And I think the reason is because we don't give ourselves the space to really know what we want. Like if we really turned inward, like I actually had a client session yesterday with somebody who she literally laid out exactly what she wanted. And I literally was like, did you hear it yourself? You already know the answer. You know, like literally she presented this whole case to me. And I was like, okay, now listen to what you just said, right? Like having that session gave her the mental space to talk it through, to realize she already knew. But she just wasn't at that point to trust herself. And I was like, you examined the evidence. You did the research. You did this. You did that. It's all there. And now you just have to trust that your gut and you are telling you what you need right now. But that's the next key, is right now. You might need something different tomorrow. You might need something different years ago. But where you are in the phase of your life today, what is it that you really need? And what is it that you really want?
Yeah.
If you turn inward and pause, you're going to get the answer.
Oh, it's so beautiful.
You have said so many beautiful words and shared so much already that feels so valuable. I wonder if there are words that really deeply resonate with you, or maybe you've carried for a long time, or they come back and when they sit with you, you feel a deep connection to them. If there are a few words that are Rachel's words, and if you would share those.
Yeah. So to clarify though, you want like 5 single words or like sentences, or?
You make the rules.
Okay.
You make the rules.
Okay.
Yeah. So they can be more than 5 words or less, but words that really register with you and really represent who you are, not necessarily words that someone else would say about you.
Okay. Yeah, those would be completely
That's a good
different.
distinction.
Those would be completely different.
Right? Yeah.
You know, it's funny because in the book, I mentioned Dr. Rachelisms. And my clients call them that because there's certain things that I kind of say on repeat. And one of them I've already said, so it's not going to be surprising, but focus on what's in your control. It is a constant reminder that I need, that I come back to, that I really think we all need. Exactly. Yes. And then I would say the other words that come to mind, one more recently, has been either aligned. I feel like as I have entered of my life, you know, I have 2 young children with the book on its way and really doing the work that I love in so many ways. I feel like I am really aligned into the mission, my passion, and really living, you know, kind of in the way that I want to be to a degree. I mean, we all have our moments, of course. And then funny enough, when you were going to ask me this, 2 other words that popped up were just mom and runner. Things that just really describe me, you know, in addition to my professional titles. I always like to add, you know, I'm a mom, I'm a sister, I'm a daughter, I'm a friend. But really the mom, I'm in that phase, like, you know, a 2-year-old and a 7-year-old. Yeah. And my running, I actually just completed a half marathon a few weeks ago.
Did you?
Yeah. My first.
Is that your first?
No. It's actually funny. My second since having 2 children.
Okay.
My first not breastfeeding.
Oh,
So like,
wow.
yeah. So my last one, like 2-ish years ago, I was still breastfeeding.
Of course.
And I was like, I need to do at least one more, like where I am in my phase of life without having that extra stressor, so to say.
Yeah.
But I
How
did.
was that for you?
It was, you know what? It's a story.
Okay.
No. Well, I mean, the short version is I was supposed to do this race a year ago
Mm-hmm.
with a friend who ended up not being able to come. And then I think I overtrained a little bit and felt like I was going to get injured if I actually did the race. So between her backing out and me not feeling my best, I listened to my body and I also backed out.
Yeah.
Knowing I could do it again this year, but knowing it was going to be 2 weeks before my book launch and didn't know if that was a smart idea. Looking back, it was the smartest thing I did. Because again, using my tools, I think the first thing that could have gone was my running. I would have gone for 10 minutes. I would have done this, but that space that I gave myself, that permission to go on those longer runs. And I go with a friend. So to like connect and be social with a friend in the midst of, I'm going to just call it chaos between home life with 2 little kids and writing a book and book launch and all this. I think that's what I needed. And it actually hit me during the run that like, oh my God, I wrote a book. Like I literally was like, like it was like a moment that I was like, wow, it's half marathon. My book out soon. I'm somehow I did it. And I'm doing it. So yeah, I didn't feel like I needed to run that race for many reasons, and I almost didn't. And I'm glad that I did for many reasons. But again, it was really making sure that I created that space for myself. And I actually do my best thinking on runs or in the shower. So I think I got a lot of fun ideas, the book and different things also when I was running.
Isn't it interesting? Do you find that the moment that you take at the beginning of sessions with folks that you're working with and running tend to bring up similar experiences or reminders or feelings or notices? Like, do you find a connection between those?
Yeah. So I actually use running analogies a lot in therapy. And throughout the book, I have a few of them as well. I think running is such a good analogy of life. You know, and even running a marathon, to be honest, because, you know, I often say you have to train for it. And you don't just wake up and run a marathon. You have to start with baby steps. And most, like, you know, the training for a marathon takes months. And like, if you wait to celebrate, just like the book, if you wait to celebrate on book day or on the day you cross the finish line, I actually think you're never going to get there. Or if you do, it's going to be really, really challenging and difficult and draining. And you might regret it because you're not taking the time to acknowledge and celebrate kind of each mile or each win along the way. So I actually use a lot of running analogies. And it's funny, the working title I got this book proposal was actually Training for Life. My running. And I, you know, we decided for multiple reasons that wasn't the right book title, but Training for Life and Life Happens were 2 titles I had in my phone probably 20 years ago. Of like, if I ever write a book. Yeah. And it's funny because what I used to say, the story behind it was I was running in a lot of races, probably actually it was 20 years ago. And one day I wasn't signed up for a race and all my friends were like, what are you training for? What are you training for? And I said, I'm training for life. And they said, what do you mean by that? And I said, I'm training for life for when life happens. So,
wow. Both titles in one moment.
Exactly. And
I just got the
realized,
goosebumps.
I know, right? And I remembered being like, I want to be in the best physical, emotional shape that I can, focusing on what's in my control for whatever is thrown my way. And actually looking back, there are phases of my life that I'm like, wow, I'm so glad I did that. I mean, one of them was when I became pregnant with my first. I remember saying to my doctor, what do I need to change? Like, I'm pregnant. What do I need to change? What should I do differently? And she literally was like, Rachel, I know you. I know everything you're doing. You don't need to change anything. She's like, you're already active. You're already doing this. You're already doing that. You're already doing that. And I didn't. And that's, again, the premise of this book is that I don't want anybody to have to overhaul their life for when life happens. I want you to be prepared. Now, does that mean you have to be doing all of those things all the time? No. But like when you're pregnant, if you're already running, they tell you keep running. You know, I literally ran up until the day I gave birth to both children.
What?
Literally.
That is so cool.
Which isn't for everybody. I know that. It's not for everybody. But again, like whatever I was doing, I was just like hitting the repeat button. So for me, it wasn't overwhelmed doing it. Right. And again, that's the idea of this book. Like I don't want life, like we know that.
Yeah.
And we're going to have to shift and we're going to have to pivot, you know, and some things really suck. Those curveballs can be really sucky. And I don't want anyone to be like, oh my God, I have to change my whole life to make this happen. You know, it should be in a way that's like, all right, I'm just going to hit the reset button. Maybe I need to be a little more intentional about these things. You know, like right now in this phase for me, I'm already doing it, but I have to be more intentional. You know, there's a difference between that and being like, oh my God, I have so much to do.
Yeah. You know, I think about how
you go.
When we first met and heard about you was that Reese Witherspoon's Shine Away in LA last fall. And I remember looking around, not only in the space that we were sitting in, watching you and Dr. Lucky, who we've also had on our podcast, which is such a joy, looking at the people that were sitting around us and then leaving that space and looking at all the women that were around. And there's some men too, which was just so awesome. The word that kind of surfaces for me is community. And I'm wondering how that plays into your life, especially right now. So I'm curious, what does community mean to you? And like, how does that show up in your life right now and in the recent past?
Yeah. So I think so much of life comes back to community, to be honest. I think we all can think back to times in our life that we felt kind of alone or isolated or even felt alone and then isolated ourselves. And again, common as we go through different phases of our life as well. But I think it all goes back to that connection and that community and feeling supported. And oftentimes we have to create that though. And I think that's what people forget. We don't live in the years that like maybe your grandparents lived, right? Where like their tribe, their village, you know, like their community was built. To hear stories from my mom of like her cousins lived downstairs from like, you know, in New York City and like apartment complex, or you know, the brownstone or whatever it was. But we don't have that these days for most people. Some people do, but that's not the norm. And it doesn't mean that we can't have because of that. It's creating and building what we need. And community for me is honestly why it's because of my online community, I think, you know, and all of the people that have reached out to me that have been on my wait list or things like, you know, have really inspired me. You know, when you hear like, wow, or wow, I heard you speak on whatever, you know, those messages start sinking in and you're like, wow, like this is what people need. This is what people want. And I remember years ago when I started on Instagram, I used to do what we did earlier. I used to encourage people to take these mindful moments. And I would put it in my stories like first thing in the morning. And I remember those messages that I would get. And I never thought, you know, I think I have this in the conclusion section too of the book. I never thought that my messages would resonate so much and would lead me to where I am today. And it's because of that community. I'm like, wow, I do have messages that I can share. And I want to, but again, it all goes back to community. And if I did my support system, this also wouldn't be possible. And that's why if you read the acknowledgement section, it's a few pages because I'm literally acknowledging so many people that have really helped me create the space that I needed to do what I'm doing and to write that book.
Oh, that's so powerful.
It's interesting too how you shared that running is such a through line in your life. And then you talked about how you run with a friend and you said it, and that is how much of a metaphor training, running, being with others, doing your best thinking or your most grounded thinking or having the most kind of clear space in your mind while running, and how that parallel to community in the sense of, belonging to something or something belonging to you that you're part of, that you find that kind of flow state. I am not a runner, but I think about what I hear from runners often is that they do get into a state of mind that takes over and becomes a little bit euphoric. I wonder, do you find that happens to you? And do you find that in other places? Like when you're surrounded by your people, your friends, your family, do you find that there's a similarity?
Yeah, definitely. And I'm glad you mentioned this too, because I often say you need to find the tools that work for you. Right? For me, it could be running, it could be community support, calling a friend, etc. But we all need the tools that work for us. And my goal would be that everybody would find, and again, it's in the book as well, about creating and building your own coping toolbox, but that everybody finds those things that bring that sense of joy or that grounded feeling. And I mean, when I go running, and then also I'm an outside runner. I run on the treadmill, but rare, other than like in a gym class. But if I had an option, I would be running up. I do run outside year round, to clarify, like literally year round. But there's a different feeling for me, but I can get that feeling from just taking a walk outside also. And I think that's important to acknowledge that it's the combination of moving our bodies and being in fresh air. I live in New York City, so I'm saying fresh in a way. But, right. But being outside, right, and moving our bodies can really do wonders for our emotional health and well-being. But I think at different times we need different things. And that's what brings us back to what we said even earlier. But as you're going through different phases of your life, to acknowledge and be okay that maybe what was working before isn't working now. Right. So
that's really good.
There's some days that I need to get out and take a walk. There's other days that I need to call my mom and vent. I probably do both of those on most days, but you need different things at different moments. And that's why it's important to have that toolbox to be able to pull from different tools because they mean different things and they serve different purposes at different times.
Yeah. I love the term coping toolbox. It draws such a wonderful image of, again, going back to what we talked about in the beginning, giving people the sense that they're in control because you get to fill up your toolbox with your unique tools. And it just feels so empowering, again, to know that you can do that and that you have the full capacity and that you don't need a lot to be able to do that. It's not because you don't need access to anything more than what you have, which is figuring out those things that work for you.
It's so important that we all figure that out. I'll just start, and I always say now that we gave that breathing exercise, I tell everybody the best thing is you already have one tool in that toolbox now, right? Like if that breathing exercise worked for you or another one, I call them internal coping tools that you don't need anybody else for or anything else for. It could be that breathing exercise. It could be a different breathing exercise. It could be a relaxation technique. But I always recommend to put at least one of I want to acknowledge that you mentioned that there were two really big moments in your life two that you mentioned, but leaving a role that you had been in, and it sounds as though, and I'm making an assumption, but it sounds as though you were working within a hospital and in a role that was a full-time role within a hospital, and you left that, and that was a big shift. And Krista noted that that's a big thing that we're hearing in women, that there are these massive kind of shifts that happen. So I want to acknowledge that you talked about that being a big pivot moment. And then you talked about the book and how that was another, the description of, am I ever going to finish this book? And is this book ever going to but finally be done, and living through that and drawing on these tools that you were not only, it's very meta, you were drawing on the tools that you were writing a book. Right. No, it's so true.
Yeah.
I mean, and I don't think I realized it in the moment until I wrote the conclusion.
Really?
I was like, wow, I did it. And then I was like, wait, I said I was never going to do it. And here I did do it. And how did I do it?
That.
Oh my gosh, I used the same tools I just wrote about. It was just full moment. Yeah.
It was so good.
And after I wrote it, I remember being like, should I leave this? And they're like, yes. Like, I'm leaving this.
Yeah.
And like, even like, I almost want to read that section real quick.
Yeah.
I know we're like out of time.
Gosh,
but
this is perfect.
let me see, where's the conclusion? Here, like literally the conclusion is called Conclusion We Did It.
Yes.
And it starts with, remember in chapter 4, when I said I'm never going to get this done? Well, I did, and we did. I just took a moment to celebrate, and I hope you have been doing the same as well. Because remember, it's those small wins that help us keep moving forward by reminding us that not only can we do it, but we are doing it. And that's the first paragraph of my conclusion section.
Woo! Yeah. That feels really good to hear. And I think the key is like you have such a beautiful way of relating to people, knowing people, seeing them for who they are. Your ability to communicate all of those things feels so grounded and so real and so authentic. So I just really appreciate what you're doing. Not like for real. I mean, it's just such an incredible thing, you know, you're such a giving person and so kind and so smart. And we're so grateful for your time.
I appreciate it so much. And it really is such an honor, really. I'm so grateful. I'm also, very fortunate to be able to do the things that I've done, like to leave the job, like to write a book, like to have children. I acknowledge that. And I'm just so grateful that, I often say if I can change or touch one person's life, and like the messages that I get on Instagram are really my daily reminders of my why. And it's very, I don't even have the right words, to be honest, in terms of how I'm feeling about this book being out there and people reading it and it resonating with people. But it's my why. It's like, yes, this is why I do what I do. And I'm just so grateful to have people like you in my life that have connected and wanted me, on your.
Thank you. Please share with us where they can buy your book and where they can find you to hear more tips and stay in touch.
Yes, thank you. You can buy my book pretty much anywhere you like to buy books at this point. But you can also go to whenlifehappensbook.com to get those direct links. And then I'm on most social media platforms as Dr. Rachel NYC.
Perfect. Thank you so much NYC. For your time.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening, friends. We invite you to stay connected with us on Instagram. Dig deeper on our website at halfbetty.com and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more inspiring conversations. You can also find Andrea and I on LinkedIn. And honestly, any way you choose, please reach out. We always love hearing from you. Huge thanks to Dr. Goldman for providing us all with our first tool in our coping toolbox. Remember to pause and breathe. You got this. Until next time.